I am 93 years old, and the man I loved for 58 years has been gone for 7. And every single day I think about the things I should have said to him while he was still sitting across from me. Not the big things we said those. I love you. I am proud of you. We said those plenty. I am talking about the conversations that mattered more than any of that. The ones we kept putting off because there was always tomorrow, until there wasn't. So if you are over 60 and your husband is still beside you, still breathing, still sitting in that chair every evening, I need you to listen to me. Because you have something I would give everything to get back. You have time, and you are wasting it on silence. These are the 5 conversations I never had, and I am giving them to you now, so you don't carry the same regret I do. My husband Thomas was a quiet man, good man, steady, but quiet. He showed love by fixing things, by showing up, by working overtime without complaint. He wasn't the kind to sit down and talk about his feelings, and I wasn't the kind to push him. We spent 40 years communicating through chores and routines and the occasional argument about money, and I thought that was enough. I thought love didn't need words as long as the actions were there. I was wrong, and if you are in a marriage like that right now, the kind where everything works but nothing gets said, please hear what I am about to tell you, because the clock is ticking, and I can hear it from here. Number 1, ask him what he is afraid of, and tell him what you are afraid of too. Thomas was terrified of losing his independence. Terrified, but he never told me. I found out from his doctor after his second fall. The doctor said, your husband has been asking me if he is going to end up in a wheelchair. He has been asking for 2 years. 2 years he carried that fear alone. 2 years he lay awake next to me in the dark, and I had no idea what was running through his mind, because I never asked, and he never offered, and I had fears too. I was afraid of being alone, afraid of outliving him and not knowing how to pay the mortgage or start the lawnmower or sleep in that bed by myself. But I never said any of that because saying it felt like inviting it to happen. Fear doesn't go away because you ignore it. It just grows in the dark, and after 60 the fears get bigger and the time to talk about them gets smaller. So ask him tonight, what keeps you up? And then sit there and listen, really listen, even if his answer scares you, because knowing what he is afraid of is better than guessing, and letting him know your fears is braver than pretending you don't have any. And here is what nobody tells you about this one. Number 2, talk about what happens when one of you gets sick before it happens. When Thomas had his first stroke at 71, I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know if he wanted to be on a ventilator. I didn't know if he wanted to go to a facility or stay home. I didn't know who his doctor wanted me to call first. I stood in that hospital hallway making decisions for a man I'd slept next to for 43 years. And I realized I didn't know the most basic things about what he wanted for his own life, because we never talked about it, not once. He recovered that time, and the first thing I did when he came home was sit at the kitchen table and say, we are having this conversation today. He tried to change the subject. I said, no, we're doing this. And he looked at me and said, you are right. I am sorry we didn't do this sooner. Write it down, all of it. What he wants, what you want. Where the papers are, where the passwords are. Who to call, it is not morbid. It is mercy. It is the last love letter you'll ever need to write each other. But this next one might sting a little. Number 3, tell him what you need from this marriage now, not what you needed at 30. At 30, I needed him to help with the children and pay the mortgage and fix the sink when it leaked. At 40, I needed him to notice me again after years of being invisible in my own house. At 50, I needed him to stop working so much and come home before the kids forgot his face. But after 60, what I needed was different, and I never told him. I needed him to ask me how I was, not how the house was or how the grandchildren were, how I was Elena the woman, not the wife, not the grandmother, me. I needed him to sit with me on the porch without the television on. I needed him to hold my hand in the grocery store like he used to when we were young. I needed him to say you are still beautiful to me, not because it was true in the way it was at 20, but because I needed to hear it at 70, and he couldn't read my mind. That is what I finally understood. He wasn't withholding those things. He just didn't know I needed them, because I never opened my mouth and said it plainly. I need you to see me. Don't wait for him to guess. He has been guessing for 40 years and he is exhausted. Tell him clearly. Tell him gently. But tell him you both deserve that honesty now more than ever. The marriage you want after 60 doesn't come from hoping. It comes from asking. Stay with me. This one is important. Number 4, forgive each other for the things you've been carrying. Out loud. There was a year in our marriage, 1981. Thomas did something that broke my trust. I won't say what it was because that is between him and me and God, but I carried it for decades, like a stone in my chest that I never put down. And he carried his own stones too. A time I humiliated him in front of his brother. A Christmas I ruined with my anger. We both had a list, and we both pretended it didn't exist. It was 2 years before he died that we finally said it all on the back porch. A Tuesday evening in October, he said, I am sorry for what I did in 81. And I said, I know, and I forgive you, and I am sorry for what I did too. And he took my hand and we sat there crying like two people who'd been holding their breath for 20 years and finally let go. That single conversation did more for our marriage than the previous 20 years combined. Because forgiveness isn't forgetting. It is deciding that the person sitting next to you matters more than the wound they left behind. Don't take those stones to the grave. Put them down together while you still can. And now the last one. And I saved it for last because it is the one I think about every night. Number 5. Say the things you'll wish you'd said when one of you is standing at the other's grave. The morning Thomas died, I was holding his hand. And in those last minutes, I said everything I'd been saving. I told him he was the best decision I ever made. I told him I was sorry for every cold shoulder and every slammed door. I told him our life together was my greatest adventure. Every word. And then he was gone, and I walked out of that room and thought, why didn't I say those things when he could have answered me? Why did I wait until he was too weak to say it back? I had 58 years to tell that man what he meant to me, and I saved it for the last 5 minutes. Please don't do what I did. Tell him tonight, not in a greeting card, not on his birthday tonight, at the kitchen table, over coffee that is gone cold. Say the thing you've been meaning to say for years. You changed my life. I'd choose you again. I am glad it was you. Say it. Before the chance to hear him say it back disappears forever. So here is what I want to leave you with tonight. Marriage after 60 is not the slow ending everyone assumes it is. It can be the beginning of the most honest years of your life together. But only if you stop being polite and start being real. Thomas and I wasted years on politeness, years on routine, years on the comfortable lie that everything was fine when it wasn't. And the years we finally started talking, really talking, were the best years of our marriage. Not the easiest, the best. Every scar on that table was a year we survived. And the ones after we started being honest were the ones I'd live over again in a heartbeat. I would give anything for one more Tuesday evening on that porch with him. One more cup of cold coffee at the kitchen table. One more night of holding his hand in the dark and saying, I am glad you are here. You still have that. Don't let it pass. If this reached something inside you today, leave me a comment. Tell me which conversation you know you need to have. I read every single one, and some of them make me cry, but the good kind of cry. The kind that means something is healing. And if there is a woman in your life whose marriage has gone quiet, send her this, not as criticism, as a lifeline. Because sometimes we need someone else to say what we're too afraid to say to ourselves. Thank you for letting me share something this personal. Thomas would be embarrassed that I told you all of this, but I think he'd also be proud because he'd know it might help somebody. Go sit with him tonight. Don't bring your phone. Don't turn on the television. Just sit and say the first honest thing that comes to your mind. That is how it starts, one honest sentence and then another, and before you know it, you are finally having the marriage you always deserved. You've come too far together to spend the rest in silence. Love him out loud while you still can.